From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the evening news brief on Telesur English. We begin this new edition right now. We begin in Ecuador, where there have been some strong reactions to the 6-year jail sentence for Vice President Jorge Glass. The former president, Rafael Correa, said that the person that was being arrested was an innocent person and that he was a political prisoner. Ecuadorian authorities were following, he said, Correa, that the Ecuadorian authorities were following the same script that was used with Dilma Rousseff, with Lula da Silva, and with Cristina Fernandez in Argentina. We have more details in the next report.
Supporters and opponents of Vice President Jorge Glass gathered outside the National Court of Justice. They wanted to know the final verdict of Judge Edgar Flores on the charges of criminal association in the Odebrecht case.
The actions of engineer Jorge Glass are grounds for committing a crime, given that as a public official, as director of the Solidarity Fund, and as Vice President of the Republic, in association with José Conesiao Santos of Odebrecht, he arranged public contracts in strategic sectors in exchange of economic rewards.
After these conclusions, the judge's sentence was 6 years in prison for Jorge Glass, his uncle Ricardo Rivera, and the 3 others accused. The reactions were immediate.
We are going to appeal.
The Attorney General Carlos Baca, who had presented the evidence in the trial that started on November 24th, also gave his reactions to the verdict.
Today's verdict against the accused and the 6 years sentence is the result of the teamwork carried out by the Attorney General's office throughout this period.
Glass's defense team rejected the sentence and said that they will immediately file for a provisional suspension of the sentence and for their client to be set free, and also that they will appeal the verdict itself.
This is an iniquitous sentence, a barbarous sentence that violates constitutional norms and the principles of criminal law. He will not resign as vice president. He is innocent of any crime.
Immediately after the verdict, the opposition bloc in the National Assembly asked the Speaker to move forward with a political trial of Jorge Glass to remove him as vice president.
So who is Jorge Glass, and why is his sentence a key issue for the political situation in Ecuador?
An electrical engineer first became vice president in 2013 for the second term of former President Rafael Correa. He was very close to Correa and held key positions in telecommunications from 2007. His major role was to head the Ministry of Strategic Sectors, where he oversaw the construction of hydroelectric plants and dams, some of them built by Odebrecht. After the earthquake that killed more than 600 in the coastal area, he was in charge of the reconstruction efforts. He ran for a second term as the running mate of the current president Lenin Moreno. Deep differences between the two soon emerged, and Moreno removed Glass from his official duties after criminal allegations were presented.
We spoke with Telesur's Pablo Vivanco, who has been following this case from Quito.
Yes, Carla. Immediately after the verdict, supporters and detractors of Jorge Glass took to the streets outside of the courtroom, as well as outside of the País Alliance headquarters here in Quito. Former President Rafael Correa was one of the first to respond to this. He took to Twitter, where he blasted the decision against Glass. Correa obviously insisting that Glass is innocent and also saying that the trial was full of irregularities. The former leader added that they will take this case to international bodies, a signal that this battle could spill over to courts outside of the country. Now, Correa and others have insisted that this trial is political and have likened it to the cases against former President of Brazil, Lula da Silva, as well as Argentina's Cristina Fernandez, among others. Glass obviously is going about the process of appealing the 6-year, $33 million verdict against him in Ecuador courts. However, the right-wing legislators in the National Assembly are pushing for impeachment proceedings to begin against him, and the Legislative Commission that's processing this request announced that they would be meeting today in order to review it.
Peru's opposition is demanding the resignation of President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski by the end of this day, following Odebrecht corruption revelations against his president. The Popular Force Party argued at a news conference that Kuczynski could no longer hold office after Brazilian Odebrecht reported having transferred $4.8 million to companies linked to him. They are calling for Vice President Martín Vizcarra to replace him.
What the Peruvian people are demanding here is for the president to resign and for there to be a constitutional transition for the vice president of the republic to take over Peru's presidency. We have also heard that there are rumors regarding a possible order for preventive prison of Keiko Fujimori with the clear purpose of threatening us, of making us submit, so we cannot continue this fight we have started against corruption.
In Havana, the 16th Political Council of the Bolivarian Alliance of the Peoples of Our Americas, People's Trade Treaty, the ALBA TCP, has opened with the aim of strengthening unity among its members. A correspondent in Havana, Laura Prada, sends us this report.
Hello, yes, nice to greet you. Indeed, in few moments we'll start the 16th Political Council of ALBA TCP here in Havana with 15 members of this regional group. They will be working and on topics that concern the region, among others, and they will reiterate the proclaim set in 2014 that Latin America and the Caribbean is a peace zone. Besides this, early in the morning took place the 18th meeting of the Intergovernmental Commission Cuba and Venezuela that was presided by the Foreign Minister of Venezuela, Jorge Arriaza, and the Commerce and Foreign Inversion Ministry, Rodrigo Malmierca of Cuba, and they signed the protocol that will continue the cooperation between the two nations. This is all I have for now. I get back to you.
That was Laura Prada from Havana. Now, protesters have gathered outside the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, as the government body voted to roll back the so-called net neutrality. The rules brought in by the Obama administration require internet providers to treat all traffic equally. Protesters are calling it an undemocratic agenda, allowing the internet providers a privileged corporate position of power over all other parties. Simon Sanders, a political strategist and former National Press Secretary for Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, said that the move will see an end to the current system of equality that operates between businesses on the internet.
It means an end to a free and open internet. That means now you might have to pay for things like Twitter and Instagram, and folks will start carving up the internet into packages, and people with more means will have access to more spaces and places on the interweb.
For more on and we have more news in a minute. Stay with us. To continue talking about net neutrality, and for more implications on this, we go to Victor Picard from the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you for your time, Professor Pickard. How worried should we be about this move by the FCC as internet users?
Well, Carla, I think we should be very worried. This throwing out net neutrality protections will allow internet service providers to block our online content, slow it down, perhaps censor us, set up slow lanes and fast lanes. So this is very bad for democracy. It's bad for small businesses, bad for activists and journalists. Basically, the only one who really benefits from this are the internet service providers themselves, like Comcast and Verizon and AT&T. So I think this is not a good decision.
So people are talking about the commercial issue, but now not many people have been talking about if there's going to be any censorship on content in the internet. What can you tell us about this?
Yes, well, I think a lot of people are very concerned about this. And of course, the way this decision happened was very undemocratic. Americans are overwhelmingly in support of keeping net neutrality. But without net neutrality protections, internet service providers can now block things that they don't want to see online. They can charge us extra money for particular kinds of content. It basically changes the internet into something that resembles cable television. So this is not a very democratic move. And I think we have good reason to be concerned about this, but it's not over yet. It still could head to the courts. I don't think activist groups will give up on this fight. It's going to be an ongoing struggle.
Thank you very much, Professor Pickard. We'll be sure to follow up anything on net neutrality over here. So the debate in Argentina on Mauricio Macri's pension reforms have been suspended. It has followed clashes between protesters and police outside the Argentine Congress in Buenos Aires. Police used rubber bullets and tear gas against labor union members who were protesting Macri's reforms, saying they would ruin their lives of retirees and welfare recipients. Argentina's president is relying on the policy to continue with austerity plans, which has awakened harsh backlash from opposition politicians and the working class.
We are on this side trying to prevent this parliamentarian session from happening. We have presented all possible legal resources, but Cambiemos doesn't respect anything. Cambiemos is violating all current legislation to hold a session that absolutely hurts retirees.
To talk about suspended pension reforms and the clashes, here's our correspondent Edgardo Esteban with the details from outside the National Congress in Buenos Aires.
We are living a very tense situation outside the Congress building, while lawmakers were trying to debate the pension law reform proposed by the government of Mauricio Macri that aims to take $5,000 million from the retirees. Around 3,500 policemen repressed the demonstrators that took to the street of the capital to protest against the reform that will affect those who have the least. Policemen repress people as they fire rubber bullets to them and also use tear gas against the people that try to reach the Congress building to demand this law be rejected. Different social sectors were attacked today for protesting against the right-wing measures of the government of Mauricio Macri.
That was Edgardo Esteban from Argentina. Now, Sebastián Piñera and Alejandro Guillier are closing their electoral campaigns in Chile as he prepares to choose their next president. Our correspondent Francisca Castillo sent us this report.
The campaign period has officially ended here in Chile ahead of voting day on Sunday, December 17th. Today, both candidates will hold their closing campaign rallies in the capital. Sebastián Piñera will hold his at Capolicán Theater and Alejandro Guillier at La Ciudadanía Square, just in front of the Palacio de la Moneda, in the presence of former Uruguay's President José Pepe Mujica. Both candidates are expecting a massive attendance and the support of the militants from both parties as they are preparing themselves to deliver their final speeches. The military forces are ready to take possession of every voting center around the country, and the electoral authorities are ready to finalize any arrangements they need for Sunday's elections that will define who will run the country for the next 4 years.
From Chile, that was Francisca Castillo. So with just 3 days to go, let's take a look at the Chilean candidates' proposals regarding international relations.
For some experts, Chile's international relationships are marked by their economic pragmatism and by being attached to state policies. They assure that this is the reason why, despite who is elected this Sunday, it will be very difficult to see significant changes in the matter.
Chile has always been part of regional organization that links us to the rest of Latin America, but also looking a lot more to the European Union, Asia, USA, and Canada.
During his presidential term, Sebastián Piñera, current candidate of the right wing, also ruled his international policy along those guidelines. However, at the end of the last year, it was revealed that a company purchased a Peruvian fishing company, and at the same time, in the International Court of Justice, a litigation concluded with a judgment that forced Chile to give maritime space to Peru.
Someone could say that it was an economic hunch, but that economic hunch is meant for businessmen, not for the president.
In September of this year, the Supreme Court decided to close the investigation that was carried out against Sebastián Piñera for the alleged use of privileged information for the benefit of his particular businesses. The attorney assigned to the case determined that, despite that there were ethically reproachable actions, it didn't represent a crime.
The president is taking advantage of an unfortunate decision when he was precisely the one running international policy.
On the other hand, Alejandro Guiller, the candidate backed by the parties that led Michelle Bachelet to office, point out that Chile's international policy must strengthen their real relationships with countries of the region.
I believe that we should strengthen our ties with Latin America in favor of the defense of free trade, of the diversification of our economies, of our integration, not only economical, but also political, so we can defend our interests in the international forums.
The candidate who wins on December 17th will take office and present his government cabinet on March 2018. That will include the Foreign Affairs Minister. And from that moment on, the tendency of the new government on international relationships will become clearer.
Uruguay's lower house has approved a law against gender-based violence. It will create special facilities to attend the cases of domestic violence and promote other rights and guarantees.
The law project typifies the sexual abuse crime called until recently a violent attack to decency, and it now incorporates the rights of women for their testimony not to be disregarded and offers protection for child victims of abuse and violence.
This is integral because it provides prevention, also pedal aspects that weren't contemplating some issues. So this allows a general policy that holds all kinds of violence accountable and establishes which ones are gender violence.
For most of the opposition, this law disregards some sectors of society.
This clearly discriminatory law protects women, but expressively excludes people from the male gender from its protection. These are also victims of gender violence, of domestic violence.
Other legislators, regardless of their being part of the opposition, voted in favor of this law.
We do support
this law. We know it's a tool. We perfectly know this isn't the solution. But we have to start working for new elements to really solve the situation that all Uruguayans are going through.
This law seeks to guarantee the effective fulfillment of the right of women for a life free from gender violence, as it's quoted in its text, something quite difficult nowadays, when 35 women, 3 of them girls, were murdered this year.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Russian President Vladimir Putin has held his annual press conference at the World Trade Center in Moscow. Our correspondent Hansel Oro was there and sent us this report.
Vladimir Putin gave his annual press conference where he spoke about the ties between Russia and the United States, especially after Russia's president was asked about the alleged contact his government maintained with Donald Trump during his presidential campaign. Putin denied this allegation and said Russia had nothing to do with the alleged hackers that interfered in the 2016 United States presidential elections. He also said this was an invention, the consequence of the political schizophrenia suffered by the Democrat Party, and that they are looking for different ways to impeach President Trump, hurting both countries' relationship. Regarding the conflict in Ukraine, President Putin said that Russia's military is no longer present there. He added that the United States could join the group of 4 countries, Russia, Ukraine, France, and Germany, to help resolve the conflict in East Ukraine. Regarding North Korea, Putin said that Russia could mediate the conflict and get that country to abandon its nuclear program and ask South Korea and the United States to remove their military forces from the border. President Putin also mentioned he accepted the nomination to seek a 4th consecutive term in office.
That was Hansel Odo from Russia. Now, the Russian government and Latin American countries are reinforcing bilateral economic and humanitarian cooperation. More details in the next report.
During the celebration of the 73rd anniversary of relations between Russia and Nicaragua, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the alliance with the Latin American country is strategic.
The Nicaragua of today is a state which develops dynamically. I can confirm this. I've been there more than once. I've seen the permanent changes to improve the country. The government has its own and autonomous ways for foreign policies and a great respect from the world.
According to the Russian Foreign Minister, both countries are working to strengthen cooperation, especially in areas of trade. Lavrov, along with the Nicaraguan representatives, visited an exhibition where over 50 pieces are dedicated to Russian author and painter Ilya Glazunov, who captures the essence of the Central American nation. For Russian diplomacy, the broadening of economic ties with the Latin American country and the Caribbean too constitutes an alternative of mutual advantage.
A new path of dialogue will happen within our relations with the United States, and we will continue on that road of improving it. Same thing with our relations with Nicaragua, with Venezuela, with Cuba. With all Latin American countries, relations will be better.
Russia and Nicaragua are collaborating on the development of vaccines for cattle production in the global system of Russian GLONASS and in the military sector.
The United States has presented pieces of what it said are Iranian weapons supplied to the Houthi militia in Yemen, describing it as conclusive evidence that Tehran was violating UN resolutions. The unprecedented presentation by the Pentagon is part of its follow-through on President Donald Trump's new Iran policy, which promises a far harder line toward Tehran.
What I can tell you is we're not going to sit back and not watch this. We are going to turn around and not only be aggressive about it, we're going to be forceful about it, and we're going to let the international community know what a threat this actually is.
The Palestinian party Hamas has vowed to reverse the decision of Donald Trump to recognize Jerusalem as the Israeli capital during a massive rally in Gaza City.
The first goal is to force the U.S. administration to back down from its unfair decision. Breaking the American decision, I say while relying on God, on our people of our nation, and on the free people of the world, that we will knock down Trump's decision, one time and forever.
Now let's go to our correspondent Noor Harasin to learn more from Gaza.
Today marks the 30th anniversary of the founding of the Islamist group Hamas and its militant brigade Al-Qassam brigade since this morning, and we saw hundreds of thousands of people marching in the streets, waving the green flags of Hamas and heading to Al-Katiba Yard where the celebration and the ceremony is held. The number of people who gathered at Al-Katiba is estimated at hundreds of thousands of people. Basically, we did not get a specific number. Anyway, groups of these people, after the ceremony finished, they started heading to the borderline between Gaza and Israel in order to clash face to face with the Israeli forces in order to continue the wave of anger that started last week against the U.S. decision of recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, there might be more casualties arriving to the hospitals today, not only here in the Gaza Strip, but also in the West Bank, as clashes between Palestinian youth and Israeli forces continue in different parts and cities in the West Bank.
That was Noor Harasim from Gaza. Now it's time for our World News Roundup.
Over 6,700 Rohingya were killed in 1 month after violence broke in Myanmar in August, according to Doctors Without Borders. This figure is much higher than Myanmar's official figure of 400. MSF says more than 647,000 Rohingya have fled from Myanmar to Bangladesh since then. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says that the arrest of 2 Reuters journalists in Yangon this week was a signal that press freedom is shrinking in Myanmar, and the international community must do all it can to get them released. Guterres says his main concern over Myanmar was the human rights violations by the military during a crackdown in the Rakhine state. The chair of the Subcommittee on Human Rights for the European Parliament has called for the European immigration policy to be completely revised. This comes after accusations of human rights violations by Amnesty International against several European governments.
I think
that the complaints of Amnesty International are to be taken seriously. They describe the reality that currently exists in Libya, a reality caused by a strong migration process that comes from Africa and the Sahel. Policies that some European countries are adopting on the theme of migration. These policies force people to remain in Libya in humanly unbearable conditions. I believe that the European immigration policy must be completely revised.
Syria and Lebanon have opened the Al-Qa border after 5 years as the region returns to Syrian government control, an area previously held by rebel fighters.
These current conditions, the absence of the terrorists who used to stand in the way of opening the border until now, these conditions are now normal and very safe. There are no more obstacles to opening up.
South Africa is preparing to elect a replacement for Jacob Zuma as head of the ANC and likely next president. 7 candidates are seeking the position held for a decade by Zuma, including Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, a former trade union leader and one of South Africa's richest people.
And we've come to the end of this evening news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.